Hi everybody and welcome back. We're going to review Chapter 8 today, which was all about factoring polynomials. So, I apparently can't spell today. So, we started by talking about distributing and combining like terms. So if we're distributing and combining like terms, first I would distribute the 2 to everybody in the first parentheses. And that's going to give me 10a to the 5th plus 4a to the 3rd. Then I would distribute the minus to everybody in the second parentheses. So I would have negative 4a to the 4th plus 3a to the 3rd. Then I'm going to look for like terms. Now like terms are terms that have the same variables and exponents. So in this problem, the 10a to the 5th does not have any like terms. But the 4a cubed and the 3a cubed would be like terms. Now I'm going to wait and write those down in a second because I want to make sure I'm in descending order. So next I would write down minus 4a to the 4th and then finally plus 7a to the 3rd. And that would be my final answer. Another example would be problem 2. So again, I'm going to distribute. So 3 times 3x cubed is 9x cubed. 3 times negative 4x squared is negative 12x squared. And 3 times negative 7x is negative 21x. Then I'm also going to distribute 2 times 4x cubed is 8x cubed. 2 times 5x squared is 10x squared. And 2 times 8x is plus 16x. Finally, I'm just going to combine like terms starting with the highest powers. So I'm going to combine the 9x cubed and the 8x cubed, which makes 17x cubed. Then I'm going to combine the 12x squared and the 10x squared, which makes negative 2x squared. And lastly, I'm going to combine the 21x and the 16x, which makes negative 5x. And that would be my final answer. Then we also talked about multiplying. So when you're multiplying polynomials, we said a good way to organize your work is to use the box method. Now in problem 3, since I'm only distributing one term for multiplication, I'm not going to worry about using the box method. I'm just going to have 15n to the 5th minus 20n to the 4th minus 45n to the 3rd. In problem 4, where I am distributing more than one term, we said the box method is a good way to organize that. Because in my experience, a lot of students have trouble with organizing their work. So we would write the 2x minus 7 on the top. We would write the 5x plus 2 on the side. And we would fill in our boxes. So we would have 10x squared and 4x and negative 35x and minus 14. Then we're going to look inside of those boxes for some like terms. So the like terms here would be 4x and negative 35x, which means my final answer would be 10x squared minus 31x minus 14. For problem number 5, again, we're distributing more than one set of terms, so I would suggest using the box method to organize your work. So I would write the 5x minus 8 and the 5x plus 8. I would fill in the boxes, so 25x squared minus 40x plus 40x minus 64. I'm just multiplying. Now I'm going to look for like terms. The like terms here would be the negative 40x and the positive 40x, which cancel each other out. So our final answer would be 25x squared minus 64. Last but not least, whenever you see a squared on the outside of a parentheses, that really means you need to write it twice. So 2x minus 3 times another 2x minus 3. So we're going to have 2x minus 3 and 2x minus 3. Now if we fill in our boxes, we get 4x squared minus 6x minus 6x plus 9. If we combine our like terms, we get 4x squared minus 12x plus 9. In this chapter, we also learned about factoring, and there were 3 different ways or factoring methods we needed to be familiar with. The greatest common factor, which is something that we always do first. So for example, in this problem, the greatest common factor would be 3, and then since there's 1x here and 2 here, x, and then 4y's and 2y's, I would choose y squared. Then I would write down what's left over when I factor that out. So I would get y squared minus 4x left inside the parentheses. Then we said you use the box method when there's trinomials, when there are 2 or 3 terms. So for example, if you see a problem like this, you would use the box method. And finally, you would factor by grouping when there are 4 terms. So when there were 4 terms like this, we would put them into groups and we would factor each group separately. So let's try one. So we're going to try this first example, which I just did here. We're going to go through it a little bit slower. Your common factor would be 3xy squared because we always use the lowest powers. Now that means I'm dividing each of these terms by 3xy squared. Now when I do that and I do the first term, the 3's cancel, the x's cancel, and all that's left is y squared. When I divide and I do the second term, I'm going to have minus 12 divided by 3 is 4. The x's cancel and there's only 1 left, and all of the y's cancel. If I saw a problem like number 8, I would start by looking for a greatest common factor. There is no common factor for the terms in problem 8. So instead what I would do is I would use my box method. So I'm going to fill in the 2x squared to the upper left side and the plus 7 to the lower right side. Then I'm going to make my m and my a. My m would be 2 times 7, which is 14. My a would be 5. Numbers that multiply to give me 14 and add up to be 5 would be, it should be 2 and 7. I think there was maybe a mistake when we wrote this question. This should be a minus 7. I apologize. So this would be a negative 14. That was my mistake. I'm sorry. So we would make the 2 negative. So we would fill in negative 2x and positive 7x. Then we would do a common factor. The common factor for the first column is x, and then we can just ask ourselves, instead of a common factor, what's missing? So if you want to make a 2x squared, what's missing would be 2x. If you want to make a 7x, it would be 7. And if you want to take a 2x and make a negative 2x, you need a negative 1. So my factors would be 2x plus 7 and x minus 1. For problem 9, I would start by checking for a common factor. There is no common factor here, so I would just put them into groups. So the first group is going to be x cubed plus 3x squared, and the second group is going to be negative 4x and negative 12. The common factor for the first group would be x squared, and what's left over when I factor that out would be x plus 3. The common factor for the second group would be negative 4, and what's left over when I factor that out is x plus 3. Now you're going to notice that the x plus 3 matches the x plus 3. That's your clue that you did something right. And then what's left would be the x squared minus 4. Now once I get to there, I need to keep going. And I know that I need to keep going because there's still a squared. Because there are 2 terms here, I would use the box method. So I would fill in the x squared and the minus 4. Now I'm going to look for two numbers that multiply to give me -4 and add up to give me 0. So the only two numbers that do that would be 2 and -2. So I would fill in 2x and -2x. Now the common factor for the first column is x, and then I can fill in everything else by just asking what's missing. So I'm missing an x here, a -2 here, and a +2 here, which means I'm going to drop down the x plus 3, and then I'm going to change the second parentheses to x plus 2 times x minus 2. We're going to skip number 10. We can definitely go over that in class if you would like. Feel free to ask some questions tomorrow, and I will see you for some practice. Have a great afternoon.